Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark, and I'm an alcoholic. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of the boring details of my using, just kind of hit some of the highlights. I was born in 1954 to parents unknown. I was adopted, and I have, well, they both passed now, but both of my parents were very religious. My father was a Lutheran minister. And with him being in that profession, he also liked to make the church wine for the communion. And that's how I started my drinking career. Sampling Dad's little bottles that he had stashed away downstairs. I took my first drink of alcohol at the age of 3. And at 6 is when I really started to enjoy it, which was a huge mistake. But that being said, I just continued. It wasn't that I drank to excess at that age, but I would sneak down and get a nip whenever I could without getting in trouble. And tried to lead the most normal childhood that one could live. We lived on a lake in Kendallville, Indiana. It's a private lake, and so we had all the nature that we wanted. Had trees everywhere, and so I would go out and play on the boats, and we'd take a bottle and go camping and go across the lake, and that was our weekend away. When I got into school, I can't really tell you why, but for some reason I just was quite rebellious. I never really understood. I mean, I knew I was adopted at a very early age. My parents explained the whole situation to me, but I just never related with other people very well. So my escape was to do what came normal, drink. Wasn't the best student until I got to be a senior in high school. When I became a senior, for some reason something snapped in my head, and I just got real studious about my studies. Wasn't too hard. I only had one subject, vocational welding. So it was a 3-hour course. And by that time I had graduated from East Noble. Graduated actually early in 1972. Probably the last 2 months of my senior year were spent in Lutheran Hospital because I was in a severe car accident, which took me about 6 months to recover. Most of that was in Lutheran Hospital in Fort Wayne. Once I got out of school up there, my father became chaplain at University of Kentucky down in Lexington. So at 17, they took me to Lexington, Kentucky with them, and due to their restraints and their restrictions with their education system and ours, I had to go back to high school, even though I already had graduated early, had not actually received my diploma yet. So I ended up going back to high school down there to get my last credits that they were required for me to be in the state without going to school. Long story short, I have 2 high school diplomas. Not too many people can say that, I don't believe. But here again, I didn't have the most stringent study principles up there. I had to take art, typing, and U.S. history were my 3 courses that I had to take in Kentucky. It was a great school. Actually, I got a lot more out of that high school than I did anything else. But at being 18 then down there, the high school that we had, my graduating class was 2,280 kids. So it was a huge school. Back then it was called Tates Creek Campus, and now they've changed it back to Tates Creek High School. At that time it was the largest high school in the United States. They had over 9,000 students between the 4 grades. It's quite an experience. And then being involved with the college too, I got to participate in some of the college affairs, which at my age was a lot of fun because I got to know some of the students, and here again we go back into the party mode. Once I was released from the hospital and was able to get to school without wheelchair and crutches and all that stuff, started to walk, I was offered a job, which I had many jobs, but this was probably one of my first jobs. At the age of 19, I received, well, I was the youngest person in the United States at that time to have an NHRA drag racing license to drive top fuel dragsters. Mind you, I had just gotten off of crutches and out of a wheelchair, so then they're putting me in a 260 mile an hour car to go out and have some fun. And at 19, being quite wild and, trying to feel my oats around, I got to travel the United States and see all kinds of different sights and drink. Not a great thing to do when you're driving 260 miles an hour and a quarter of a mile. Did that for about 2 years, on and off. And actually at 20, became the youngest person to win an NHRA national title as world points finalist. That was in 1974. Also got married in 1974 to my high school sweetheart, whom to this day, by the grace of God, I still have, and we just celebrated our 40th anniversary. So, thank you. Don't quite know why she's still with me, but it must be something, because I know that I put her through a living hell for many years. I had a childhood that consisted of about 56 years. I've only been sober for 4 years, as of August 11th of this year. My sobriety date, which I should have said right off the bat, is August 11th of 2010. That was the day I received my last OWI, which I had just been out of prison for 4 months, and decided, like many of us, that relapse was the answer. That was the day that I turned my will and my life over to the care of God and my understanding. And my life has gone to leaps and bounds since then. Throughout my years, I've had numerous jobs, as I said. Once I got done drag racing, I moved to Florida, down to Clearwater, and was in the construction business, amongst many other things. One of the things that I really got into, and it was by complete fluke due to some friends that I had met, was at the age of 21 and became a DEA agent. Go figure. It was one of those deals that, you just kind of stumble into it. Of course, my hair was down to below my belt and my back, and I had all the dark tan from working construction, and I just looked the part. Plus, I was also an alcoholic, and at that time, a drug addict. So I was set on to do undercover work for the DEA. I was the first guy to go on the boats and the last guy to come off. It got to be a very lucrative business working for the DEA. And I've got to kind of apologize here, because I need to talk about a little bit of drug use. And I know this is an AA function, but it's part of it. For any of you who are sports enthusiasts, you're familiar with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I say this not in jest, but in seriousness, that I got to meet Coach McKay, who was their very first coach in 1976. And through mutual relationships, if you know the history of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their first 2 seasons, I think they only won 1 game. They lost 26 in a row. I know why. They were my best customers. By being the guy that I was, I could get on the boats, and whenever we would do a drug bust, we were able to, a few of us, take some of the products off of the boat, whether it was cocaine, heroin, marijuana, you name it, we could get it. By 1979, I became one of Florida's largest cocaine dealers, and not something I'm proud of, but it's part of the story. When you do the job that we were doing, part of the job is to use, which is, it's crazy, but that's just the way it is. When you go into some place, and if you don't participate in the actions of the people that are wanting to do the buying, you're in suspect right off the bat. So that also added to my addictions. By the time I got done, actually the 1st of September of 1979, I was notified by a very close, dear friend of mine that I was number one on the DEA hit list for a bust. I had about 48 hours notice, and within 24 hours I had left the state of Florida in haste, missing a 50-year prison term in federal prison by about that much. At that time in the state of Indiana, I moved back to here, by the way. By the time that I got back up here and everything happened down there, I got the little knock on the door from the little guys in the black suits that I used to work for saying, nope, come back to the state of Florida because you're not welcome there. But there was no extradition at that time from the state of Florida or state of Indiana to Florida. So they didn't want me down there. They had enough problems of their own. Due to my insanity and my stupidity, I continued to go back down to Florida and do what I was doing and never got caught. Here again, by the grace of God. But after the 7 years, then I got my release letter stating that I was good to go and nothing would happen if I did go back to Florida and got stopped for anything. So, in 1993 was my first actual trouble with the law with alcoholism. I got my first OWI, which to most people that would be an eye-opening and say, okay, I better slow down and quit. That was just kind of my little slap on the hand and gave me the green light to go on stronger. I always wanted to just see how far I could push the extremes before anything worse would happen. I liked anything that made me feel good. If some was good, a lot was better. In my last years of my alcoholism, my rate of consumption was anywhere from $800 to $1,000 a week of alcohol. I had quit the drugs. I did that on my own. I had been a truck driver. I'd been worked for the phone company. The truck driving actually got me started on meth, which I stopped that on my own, which is a challenge in itself. But the time I had on the road was so, when you're by yourself and you're going from, at that time, Ligonier, Indiana to the West Coast, which, here again, the best drugs in the world came from California at that time, so we were just kept dealing, along with my drinking. How I never got in trouble drinking while I was driving the semis was phenomenal. I did that up till 86, but once I got my first OWI in 1993, it just seemed to snowball. By the time I got my first one, it wasn't 2 months, and I got my second one. And by August 11th of 2010, that was my 13th one, along with numerous driving while intoxicated, public intox, driving while suspended. My history and my driving record is from here to that wall back there, roughly, if you unfold it at all. I'm currently working on trying to get my license back, though, since I've been sober for 4 years and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That's not the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. The reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I want it. I never wanted it before. I figured out that the insanity that I'd put everybody else through in my life was not worth the misery that I was feeling inside. I was actually trying to drink myself to death. When you drink the volume of alcohol that I was consuming on a daily basis, it is amazing that I still walk, that I still have a liver. The only reason I can attest to me being here today is that God wasn't done with me yet. I still have my health, for the most part. I am a cancer survivor. I had 3 brain tumors removed from the time of 2002 to 2008. I've broken everything in my body from my neck down. One of them was that one car accident I had in 1972. But, it's just amazes me to this day of all the stuff that I've done to myself that I can still function as a normal human being. My higher power has taken my insanity away from my life, and that's the only thing that I can attest it to. Like I said, I grew up in a very religious house, and it wasn't strict religion, but when I was out on the road, racing and everything else, I had kind of forgot church and forgot God and forgot everybody and was just living life my way, and did that for 30 plus years until my last trouble. Then I found out that there is a better way. I'd tried the fellowship years before, probably about halfway through my stint. I would say back in the late 90s. Went into the fellowship of AA for 2 or 3 months and thought it was just too much for me to deal with. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't want to get the sponsor. I didn't want to work the steps. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was just a seat filler, and all I wanted to do was get my paper signed and get out of there. Through my rehab centers that I'd been to, the Bowen Center, Northeastern Center, the Cameron Center up in Angola. Every time I'd get out of one of the meetings, first place I'd stop on the way home was a liquor store. It was just my way of life. I didn't care. Today, I'm still trying to prove myself to people that I am the person that I have become. I work a full-time job. I also own my own business. So I stay quite busy. That is one of the main things that's kept me sober over the past 4 years, is that I just replaced all that drinking time with other time of work. This year, it's actually gotten to the point of being almost overwhelming with my own business plus working a full-time job. So as of the 1st of September, I retired kind of from my own business. I just have not had any time with my family, and that needs to be built back up more than anything else right now. I have to prioritize. Plus, I'm dealing with 2 sons that are also addicts. And for me to deal with that, I have to put more time into my family, so other things come last. I take full responsibility for my sons. I was the one that told them that if you want to drink or drug, you come see Dad first, and I'll make sure you get the good stuff. But you're not going to get all this crap that people are selling out in the streets. So that is my problem. It's something I've had to forgive myself for. It's something I've also had to make amends to my children for, and my wife. My wife was a social drinker. She was one of the normies. I was everything but normal. I was so abnormal, they didn't even have a book for it or a word for it. But today, I stand here, as clean and sober as I could ever be. Actually, when I quit drinking, I also lost about 45 pounds, which was amazing in itself. I went from 180 to 230, and now I'm back to 180 again. And my health is a lot better. As I said before, I didn't care what happened to me. If I died, so be it. I wouldn't have to worry about drinking anymore. My point in life today is to work with other alcoholics and addicts. I have a passion for recovery. That is the only way I can put it. I'm just on the verge of working on a grant to go back to school and be a drug counselor. I think that is somewhere that God has pointed me and put in my life, that I need to help other people in a larger scale. I have filed for the grant. I'm just waiting right now for the answers. But I truly do want to work with other people that have the same disease I do. It is the only thing right now in life, other than putting bread on the table for my family, that I want to do. I felt so honored that I was asked to come here today. I'm so green in sobriety. You know, I'm very young in this, but yet I feel like I've been there a lot longer than what I actually have. When Mike spoke this morning, that was inspiring to me. I love sobriety. I love the length of hearing how long people have been sober. It just gives me something to strive for. I put it in our meetings that we have up in our local area, I put it to them this way, that I drank for 50 years. I want to be sober for 50 years, which is going to make me really old. But I'm going to give it a shot. You know, we'll see what God has in store for me. It's all in His hands, not in mine. Today, I live in hope that I will retain my sobriety for the rest of my life. I work at it feverishly, probably not as strong as I should. You know, I've got one sponsee right now, and that's because he asked me. I don't go out looking for him. You know, it's not like fishing. If you make that connection, I feel lucky. I've had some that have asked me to be their sponsor, but they're not ready. You know, they didn't want it, and I'm kind of hardcore when it comes to that point of taking care of other people. You know, my first requirement for getting a sponsee is 90 and 90. If you can't do that, then you're not willing to take the steps. The sponsee I have, I'm thankful today that he's here. And today is actually his 9-month sobriety. So I want to give him a little props on that. Congratulations. I truly, truly cannot stress enough what God can do for you if you allow Him into your life. If you have not done that to this point in your sobriety, give it a shot. As I always tell everybody, you know, if you don't like what God's going to give you, double your pain and misery back when you go back out. I'll guarantee it's going to happen that way. I know it always worked that way for me. I mean, I've been to prison 3 times for alcoholism, just drunk driving, different charges. It's not a place I want to return to. This is what I want to do. I want to stay sober, and I want to work with other addicts and alcoholics. I'm not long-winded. I'm not going to sit here and run on at the mouth. I just thank you all for allowing me to come up and share my little bit of story about myself. Love each and every one of you, and we'll continue to pray for everybody's sobriety. May not know you, but I'm praying for you. With that, I'm through.